Hi guys, Darren here. Look, we're gonna get things started there now. Look, I want to thank everybody for joining us there this evening for this evening's webinar on youth S&C for club coaches. This webinar is going to be presented by Kieran Martin. As you see there, he's our performance GDA, and he also kicks a little bit of ball with the senior team as well in his spare time when he's not too busy with ourselves. Yeah, look, this webinar this evening is we try and engage as much as we can with our audience. So if there's questions along the way, and we might just hold them maybe towards the end if it's relevant at the time, we can get to them. But like that, if you want to raise a question, there's a chat box there that you can kind of post the question in there, and myself and on it as well is Tommy Gallagher. Look, this webinar will also be recorded, so we will be sending out this webinar to anyone that's on the webinar there this evening, along with information that Kieran has put together for us. So it's like an information pack. Look, I'm going to hand you over to Kieran, and I'll be talking to you again soon. Thanks.
How is everyone doing? I'm just going to turn off my screen here for a sec and turn on my video just to chat to you for a minute now before we do start. Can you all hear me okay? So this evening we're going to delve into a small bit of S&C for youth development, all right? I'm not going to keep you too long. We try and keep it in around the hour mark. Otherwise, if we go in too deep into it, we could be here till the weekend. All right. So I know you all have busy lives at the moment, trying to keep kids busy. So we're just going to go slightly into a few topics of it. And as Darren said, there is time at the end for questions, but if we do have time, we will take them. But also my email address will be up there, so you can also email me any questions. So we'll just get straight into the presentation here straight away. Okay, so now, so that should be up there now. So if you can't see it, just give me a shout and we can try and do it again, but it should be okay. Okay, so as Darren said, I'm Kieran Martin. I'm the performance GDA for Westmeath. So my club is Maryland. I'm 29 at the moment, feeling a lot older, but I've been a part of the Westmeath senior panel since 2009. So I've been working with a lot of different types of S&C coaches throughout that time. Every management would probably bring in their own S&C because every manager would have different methods and theories. But I studied sports science and exercise physiology in AIT. So that was a 4-year course. So I got my degree in 2017, 3 years ago now. And I've started working with the Westmeath Coaching the Game since September. So relatively new into the job, but enjoying every single minute of it. We do, however, have Owen Gertie with us this evening. So Owen is also studying sports sciences and exercise physiology in AIT. Owen has been in working with us under a bursary scheme, but he also will be with us next year for 6-month placement as well. So we will be getting a lot more people involved through the placement through AIT, which will benefit Westmeath and clubs around, because we will get them going out doing these types of workshops to your clubs, and also working with the development squad team. So we will have a good partnership with AIT and have a lot of qualified people working with us down the line, which will benefit us hugely. I like to start every presentation with a little quote. So this quote we have here: we worry about what a child will be tomorrow, yet we forget that he or she is someone today. So we can see there with the pictures on the side, we have Ger Egan. So the top picture was probably Ger Egan's one of his first game. I think it was actually his second championship game for Westmeath. And the picture at the bottom was taken last year. Okay, so there's probably, what was it? There is 10 years in the difference there. So it does take time. We'll have kids coming in working with us, or going into teams that will be all at different levels. So we have to focus on what they are today and try and improve them today, instead of worrying what they will be like, or what stage they will be at in 2 or 3 years' time. So every opportunity we get to coach a kid, we try and focus on where they're at that moment. Okay, so the first phase we're going to go into is the strength phase. All right, so with the strength, there's different, the outcomes of this. We'll have the purpose of resistance training. I'm going to talk a small bit about the athletic ability assessment. So the cards for them will be in your pack we send out, because if we go into too much, there'll be a lot of information there. So that basically is the system or the assessment we use to test the kids' functional movement, or the Talent Academy's functional movement. Okay, so this is a test that was brought out by Leinster GAA, and all the county teams are using this, so that at least they'll have the same database and they'll be able to compare then what levels each county is at. And we'll be talking about the GAA 15 warm-up. Okay, so working with youth athletes, we break them up into 4 different groups. Okay, so we see there our stage, we have the fundamental stage. Okay, so that's age 6 to 10. So a lot of us could have completed the foundation course, which we talk an awful lot about the fundamental stages. With that, this will be your nursery groups. So if you're working with nurseries, you'd see an awful lot on the ABCs and RJTs. So with the ABCs, we have agility, balance, coordination, and the RJTs, you're working on the running, jumping, and throwing. Okay, so with them, we know that they're all game based. That the kids are going out playing their games, and they're using these. They're working on their balance, they're working on their agility, but they don't know they're doing it. Okay, but when we come up to the 11 to 14-year-olds, these are your training to train stage. So this is your athletic formation. We introduce the likes of these, your fundamental movements. So again, your agility and balance, but we're trying to coach them more. And especially when it comes to resistance training, we're getting them used to the movements, that they're confident in every single movement that they're doing. Okay, and then we'll move on to the training to compete. Okay, a lot of people think we're training to win every time. We have to work with the kids to make them a better long-term athlete, instead of being an athlete for that year. Okay, so it does take time. We have to be patient. It's not all about winning, but again, winning is great, but we have to look at the long-term athletic development of every child we're coaching. So the training to train stage. So this is our 11 to 14 years of age. Okay, so during this crucial phase, the program should become more structured, with a focus on developing relative body weight strength, stability capabilities, and correct exercise techniques aimed at maximizing long-term results. So as I said, we're looking at their long-term athletic development, not looking at them winning straight away. So like the fun games we had with the nursery, this stage should be more structured. Okay, we should have slightly more structure, that they're not going out and playing different games by using the movements, that they have some sort of structure, that you're able to control them and you can coach them and give them their pointers of what they're doing. Okay, we can see there as well, it's going to be body weight and stability capabilities for correct exercise technique. Okay, so this is where we get the technique right from 11 to 14. We don't put them straight into their really high structure gym phases trying to get them to build muscle. At the ages from 11 to 14, it's all about movement and confident in their movement. The training to train phase is where the athletes are exposed to fundamental exercise that will target the required muscle groups in a general aspect. Okay, so multi-joint exercises are both time effective and target muscle groups in a more comprehensive fashion. Okay, so when we're using multi-joint, so we could have the likes of your typical hinge. So that would be your hinge movement is basically just movement of the hips. Where if we can get them moving multi-joint exercises, so for a typical example would be your lunge, we're working more muscle groups, and with that we're helping other aspects as well as your coordination, your balance and stability. Instead of them standing on their 2 feet doing the one exercise, with a lunge we're getting them using they're separating the feet with more distance, so you're working on balance, coordination, but we're also working on numerous more muscle groups, that we're not just working on the one muscle group. This exercise should provide a learning opportunity for the athlete. So every time they come to a training or complete a resistance training, they should always be learning. That's why we bring in that small bit more structure, where if we have them doing it through game space, they're not going to learn anything. They're just going to be involved in the game. Avoid working through dozens of exercise at a frantic pace. So you have your circuit training. Circuit training is time-based, all right? So you have so many seconds to do a lot of exercises, okay? But we don't want that. We want to encourage a good technique. So take your time with them. If you have to do 4 exercises at one session and a different 4 exercises at another session, take your time with them. It's a slow process. Again, from 11 to 14, they have 3 years to perfect these before we move them on even further. So let's not jump on it straight away by getting them to do it straight away. Take your time, take small groups at a time. Don't be doing dozens of exercises at once. Okay, and this is crucial for the technical development, which will be development of body awareness. Okay, so body awareness is the one thing we're looking for out of this. You can see your posture. The body works in straight lines. When we're running, you can see if you look at a sprinter, their body is nearly perfectly straight. There's straight alignments between all the joints. You have balance and coordination. Also, we're working on mobility and stability. If we can make them athletes like that at that age, the football and that is a lot easier to come to down the line, skills based, and also adding more strength onto that. If we're looking at the training to compete stage, so this is your 15 to 20 years, this is where the S&C program can commence with the introduction of increased external loading. Okay, so the loading we have using with the previous group would be your gravity. So either doing body weight, they're forcing against gravity. Where this we can add, when we get to 15, we can start adding a small bit external loading. That could be medicine balls, it can be resistance bands, it could be kettlebells, it could be dumbbells, whatever you're using. But until they get the technique right in the previous stage, we do not bring them onto this stage, okay? Also, it is very important to know that there is, why we do that is because of different growth spurts. From 11 to 14, you'll have kids' ages will vary, okay, but their development will vary an awful lot more. So it's called your biological age and also your chronological age, okay? So biological age is the actual age a teenager is at. So he could be 14 years of age, but his chronological age should be showing him at 16. So he could have the strength, he could have this power, he could have the speed of a 16-year-old, but really he's 14. So it is very important that we bring them in, to bring them aspects into the training, that we're not moving them, we're not progressing them too much, that we should be keeping them in the groups that they're in. Okay, the body awareness, postural skills and flexibility ranges established during the development phase, so the phase before this, need to be maintained. As they're growing, and if they are adding more forces, we need to keep their postures right. If you're adding more weight, your external load to the exercise, there is a good possibility that the posture will go out the window. Okay, that's why we don't move them on too fast. Because if you have a weight in front of you, there is a way you will tense up and your posture is gone. Okay, also the flexibility and mobility we have got in them from the development stage will weaken, because when we're adding more weight, the muscles tighten up, they'll get stronger. We need to keep them stretched, we need to keep them long. Okay, muscle after work will want to tighten up, we need to keep it stretched and keep the posture right, and we use that by stretching as well. Okay, so at this stage the fundamental exercises should be mastered. It's not always the way. If you have someone at a training age of 0, that means they have not done any of this before. And unfortunately, we will have kids that will be coming to you at under 16 that mightn't have even looked at this, okay? And it is very important that we don't put them into this straight away. We have to see what level they're at and where we go from there. Okay, so what is the purpose of resistance training? So if any of you want to write into the chat box there, Tommy's going to read out a few of the answers. What is the purpose of resistance training?
So we have increased strength and power to improve strength. Build strength, prevents injuries.
Just take one or two more.
Injury prevention. Or athlete development, sorry.
Athlete development, yeah, okay. So we all have a general fair idea of it, okay? So there is a lot more than that, okay? So the purpose of resistance training, okay, is force production, force reduction, and force absorption, okay? So force production, if we're able to produce more force, we're able to run faster, we're stronger, also you're a better athlete, okay? But also when it comes to the injury prevention, this is where the force reduction and the force absorption comes into place. All right. So force reduction and force absorption are interlinked. So if we're jumping up to catch a high ball and we're landing down, that our joint stability is strong, the muscles are able to take the weight, that we're not putting all the way through our joints. Okay. If we're sprinting, so any athlete that sprints, if he is 100 kg, and I'm just going at senior level, some lads will be 100 kg. When you're sprinting, 500 kg of weight goes through your knee. So when you're sprinting, 5 times your body weight goes through your knee. So we need to be strong enough, our muscles need to be strong enough to take that pressure off our knees. So that's where the injury prevention comes in. Also, if we are constantly training, if one muscle isn't strong enough, other muscles will have to compensate for that. And the compensation is where the injury happens. So if your glutes aren't strong and you're sprinting, your hamstrings are taking all the load. And this is where the hamstrings has to work harder. And this is then where the injury of the pull the hamstring will happen, because your hamstring is constantly working harder because your glute isn't strong enough, it's not activated. But in terms of the groups we're looking for, I have them highlighted in yellow. So at our age groups from 11 to 15, and then 15 upwards, we're looking at mobility and stability. From 15 upwards, we're looking at starting strength, postural control, functional competency. So this has been fully confident in their functional movement and balance. Okay, you'll see later on, by just working on these, they will get stronger, even by just working on the highlighted yellows. Then we're looking at down the line reactive strength, maximal strength, durability, and increased muscle mass. Okay, but you're looking at a later stage. The ones we want to look at now are the ones in yellow. So mobility, stability, starting strength, postural control, functional competency, and balance. So the youth athlete. Children and youth athletes benefit most from programs that improve body limb control and joint stability. Okay, again, this is what we're looking for. These programs would also inadvertently improve the other outcomes, e.g. strength, general strength without specific training. So we can actually improve strength endurance and general strength by not even working on them, by working on body limb control and joint stability. Okay, so this is an actual study that has proven that we can actually increase strength by just working on body control and joint stability. Okay, so I have Owen Gertie in with us this evening, so he's going to just talk a bit through the GAA 15 warm-up. We would have done workshops throughout the year, okay, and we will have more coming up. So the GAA 15 is important for warming up, but it also is a resistance training.
Yeah, can you hear me, Kieran?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So the GAA 15 warm-up. So the warm-up is an injury prevention and resistance training program that we can use for all ages. It's a way that we can include resistance training and our S&C work into our pitch sessions, and mostly target around our 11 to 14 age group. So when they get to us, they've some kind of a training age, they've some work done, they know the moves. The warm-up includes core strength, balance, body awareness, and the main focus is good posture alignment. So the technique, we're looking to get good technique every rep we do with them. So the impact the GAA 15 warm-up can have. So the warm-up, an excellent opportunity for us to develop the functional competency and bodyweight strength. So developing their ability to move in these patterns in the squat, the lunge, all these different types of ways. In this 10 to 15 minute warm-up, players can get up to 100 to 150 reps of various exercises. So that just shows the amount of work that we can get done in 10 to 15 minutes doing the warm-up. If we do 2 of these a week, we're getting 200 to 300 reps. 4 weeks in a month, that's 8 to 1200 reps a month, and so on. So 12 months in a year, we're getting nearly 8,000 to 12,000 reps. So if we're doing these badly, we're going to start building bad habits, could lead to injury. So we want them to be doing it well to increase that functional competency. And with that, if we can get them doing them well, it'll increase the performance. The two of them go hand in hand. So they should work together.
Yeah. So
the human body. So all of our bodies work in pretty much the same way. There's 6 basic movement patterns. So naturally, if you want to be strong, athletic, healthy, play Gaelic football, we have all these foundational patterns. So do you want to open up the chat box, Kieran, to see if anyone can get these patterns or see if they can get them
so
right?
if you want to write in what movement patterns, what do you think the 6 movement patterns are? If you just want to write into the chat box, and we'll get Tommy to read some of the answers out.
Don't be shy now, lads.
Yeah.
And ladies.
If you're wrong, you won't fail. Don't worry.
Yeah, there's no test at the end.
Ronan's looking for a clue, Kieran.
Okay, so there would be basic exercises that we would do in the gym. Okay, or you would do as a resistance training.
So squat, lunge, push-up, single leg exercises.
And should exclude Jer from there. He's got a bit of expertise in this area.
Yeah, well, look, he's right. Okay, so I'm just going to put them out there on if you just want to go through them.
Yeah, we have our squat, our hinge, so that was what Kieran was on about earlier, hinging at the hips. Our lunge, so that's the multi-joint work. Our push, usually working our shoulders and chest. Pull exercises, usually coming from our back. And our plank or core exercises, so all around our core area, that stomach area.
Okay, so and these are your 6 basic movements. So no matter what exercise you do in the gym, I don't know how many different versions of there. You could have a couple of hundred, we could have a couple of thousand. No matter what exercise you have, they all come down to these 6 basic movements. Yeah. All right. So it is very important that if we can get these 6 movements right from a young age, that when they get to the older and they're adding more resistance, they'll fly through it. They'll have so much better performance. They'll have so much better confidence. Okay. So of all the exercises in the world in the gym or for resistance training, these are the 6 that they'll come down to. Okay. So 6 we have plank, but that is actually the carry. Okay. So it is actually called carry, but we have it as plank because you're using your core to carry something. So your plank is you're carrying your weight on your core. So just if we go back up here, so with this when we're talking about reps, okay, so it is important that we know when to be doing the GA15. Okay, we will be sending on a lot more stuff on it. We just don't want to go into a whole lot on it because there is a full workshop that I think is about 4 or 5 hours long, but it is important that we can see the impact it can have, but it also can have a negative impact if we're doing too much. Okay, so a simple thing about getting the reps up, I think Darren's going to show us a video, but it's about knowing when to increase the reps and also decrease them. Okay, it's very easy to keep pushing and pushing someone, but if they have matches or if they're after training, it's very important to know that we're not going to push them to do the 150, that if we do 30 to 40 reps, they're still getting the knowledge and they're still learning it, but you're not going to overtire them, you're not going to burn them out. Yeah, so if you want to go ahead, keep going there on.
Yeah, so that's just a squat technique. So it's our neutral lumbar spine. As Kieran said, we have a straight line from our head down to our back, straight line from our hips to our knees. Ankle, knee and hip all in line. Hip travels below the knee, torso is parallel to our shin, and our feet are staying flat on the ground. So just some cues to help them along. Sit back onto a chair, chest tall, and look straight ahead. Next one is our lunge, so the multi-joint again, forwards and backwards. So shoulders are direct above the hips. We can see a straight line from his shoulders going straight to his hips. Then another straight line from the hips towards the knees. Another straight one then from the knees down to the ankles. So the body works in straight lines like Kieran said earlier. So the back knees below the hips at the bottom. Everything's in alignment. Neutral lumbar spine. Almost every action we do, we want a neutral lumbar spine. We don't want any bend or curve in the spine. The front foot is firmly planted. So step, plant, drop, stay tall and align. To make that harder, simple enough, make them do it backwards. It's much harder than going forwards. And then the T-plane, probably the hardest of the three of them. Hinging at the hips. So we're standing on one leg with a soft knee. Hips remain balanced. Pelvis is neutral. Straight line again. From in his back. Straight line from his shoulders to his hips. Once again. Player reaches out. Leg out behind them. Points his toe down. So move through the hips and place your chest on the table. Bring the chest towards the floor.
So with these are kind of your coaching cards now. They become part of the GA 15 as well. So they are all up online to learn as well, and you can print them off and everything. So it's not as if that you're going in blinded. With the GA Learning Network, or even through us, if you wanted to get in touch with us through workshops, anything like that, we will be going through all of this sort of stuff. But today we just want to show you examples of what they are. So with them three movements here, you have your squat, lunge, T-plane. That's all your lower body exercise covered. If they get them right, they'll be able to do any lower body exercise. So it's very important by bringing these into the start of a warm-up that we're getting them used to that movement. But also this will help with activation work. So I know times are different now, but normally you'll have the kids in school, especially in secondary school, that they'll be sitting down all day. And it even happens at senior level as well. You'll have guys sitting at computers all day in their office. And next thing they're coming home, or they're in school, they're doing evening study, rushing home, getting their gear, heading up to the pitch. Okay, so when they arrive to the pitch, they're sitting down all day. Their hamstrings are asleep, their glutes are asleep. By doing these exercises in your warm-up, you're activating all your muscles. So as I said earlier on about the hamstrings tearing, why does the hamstring tear? Because the glute is asleep, it's sitting down all day. The hamstring has to work a lot harder, and then over throughout the training, the hamstring working harder and harder and harder will come to a stage where it will tear. So you're going to cause injury. So it isn't very important that we get these into our warm-up. Again, they're learning, they're getting confident in the movement, but it does have a benefit of it as well, that they are working on strength, but more importantly, they're working on activation, and it's going to help with injury prevention. Okay. So with that, Darren, do you want to show the video now?
Yeah, no worries. If you want to stop sharing your screen, I'll share mine then.
Yeah.
Just give us a thumbs up there if it's is that coming up there now?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, guys, so just what we're going to do is just going to show you just a few seconds of the GA 15 warm-up. So you'll see there on my screen is that we've got the learningga.ie website. It's a hugely underused resource up until now, up until COVID kicked in. So all of this information and coaching courses and webinars and different things are all up here. So as Kieran alluded to there, is that they will have all the GA stuff, all different drills and skills are on this. So if you've never seen this before or have only seen it briefly, I do recommend that you go onto it and go through it in your own spare time. So I'm just going to play just a couple of examples of a GA 15 warm-up in both hurling and football.
Okay, let's get it started, boys. Forward, backward, side to side. Just pop pass, just a little pop pass to get it started. Remember the rules, go circles. Good. It's only a pop pass for the moment. And so, we're moving on to groin rotation. Mobilize the pelvis, boys, in the groin. Remember that supporting leg needs to be strong. Hip over knee over ankle. Into our standing hamstring. Wind on the back leg, front leg straight. And just rolling out of the stretch. Back straight for this. That's it. Lower back nice and straight. Well done. And go. We're going into high knees. Sprint arm technique. Let's do it.
So just can bring onto the football one here. So I might bring it into here. So you can see from the hurling, like with the football, they've kind of got activities where they're moving around, activation. So you can see from this here is that there's progressed on past that. They've introduced some strengthening work.
Or relax and do it again correctly. We're going into a single leg bridge drop. We're dropping our hips towards the floor, not quite touching it. An inch above, and then squeezing the glute back up into our neutral position. Walking forward. Reverse with shoulders. Remember the key rules. The knee does not cross the toes, boys. Focus on your hips dropping rather than your knee bending.
So like you can see from there is that on the warm-ups there, they were all kind of spread out in their own little areas and they were doing their exercises. Now that's obviously for an older age group there, like senior, well, minors, 20s into senior, is that up until they kind of get confident, you know, at that stage, what we would suggest is that, like you can see here, that there would be cones lined out and set up in a line formation where you're able to look at technique. And as the lads alluded to there, is that it's the proper techniques that you're looking for here. And as it's set up in a controlled environment, you're able to see it and then progress it on then into small sections of the field where you can kind of have them moving around in a multitude of different directions, more game specific stuff. So that's just to give you an example. So I think this might should pop up. Did that pop up there, Kieran, the other screen?
Starting to come up there now, yeah.
Yeah, so you will see then examples of, you know, the reverse lunge, how it would work.
Step backward, bringing your rear knee towards the ground in the lunge position.
Yeah, so we can see there that, again, as I said earlier on, it's about knowing how many to do, that you don't need to burn them out. Okay, so we will be looking at the FIT principle later on, but a simple way of increasing the reps and decreasing the reps is just as simple as moving the cones. So you can see there now that his cones are probably 10 yards apart. He's getting in probably 4 reverse lunges at most. If you want them to do more, you just separate the cones more, okay? And if you want them less, you just bring them less, okay? So we don't need to be shouting at them and directing them the whole time, where this will give you an opportunity to be able to look at them and see are they doing it right, instead of worrying how many they're doing. If between the cones they get 12, some might get 12, some will get 15. It doesn't matter. They're still getting the numbers in, but it's also very important that we know how to decrease it as well. So it's just a simple thing. By moving the distance of the cones can increase reps and also decrease reps.
All right, let's stop sharing it there. Yeah.
Yeah.
No worries.
Thanks, Darren.
Yeah, on there now. Yeah. Should we stop sharing?
Yeah. And we're back up. Okay.
Yep.
So the GA15 can be done through from under 12 or under 13s the whole way up to even senior. We're even doing it at senior level. Again, it's good for mobility. It's good for activation work. But if we're going into a more structured setting, into your gym base, if you're bringing a team or your team is working in a gym, so from 15 years upwards, these are the foundational strength block to follow. Okay, so, or even if you're at a team now and you want them doing a small bit at home, this is the rules that they should be following. Okay, so the exercises, as I said earlier on, you don't want, even though we're going up to the next group, you still don't want to put a load of exercises on top of them. So again, we're working between 4 to 8 exercises. The less exercises we do, the more we can do them correctly. You have 2 to 5 sets. Okay, 2 to 5 sets, so that can vary. Again, if they have a match coming up, you don't want them to be doing the 5 sets, you keep it down to 2. They're still getting the work done. Okay, 8 to 15 reps. So when we're looking at 8 to 15 reps, we're looking on more endurance side of it. Okay, 20 to 40 seconds is up there, okay, but we want to try and keep away from the seconds. These are just the numbers you'd follow. If we can keep them more to the reps, okay, so that they're not rushing through it. If you someone sees the 40 seconds, they'll try and do as many as they can in 40 seconds. We don't want them doing that, okay? We want them getting the movement correct and right, that they are doing the 8 to 15 reps. If they do 10, that's fine. If they do 15, that's fine. Once they're getting the numbers in and taking their time with it, okay? We'll see here at rest, okay, we have 1 is to 1, 1 is to 2, and 1 is to 3. Okay, we're not going to focus on that now at the moment. And this is just a work to rest ratio. Okay, some of us might know of it all earlier, but later on in the conditioning part of it, we'll see a lot more of that. Again, with the fit principle driven, it's knowing when to do it, knowing how many sets to give them. Okay, because again, as I said, if we have a match coming up, or if they're after training 3 times this week already and they have a match in between, we're not going to get them to do a block of 5. We might get them to do 2 evenings of 2 blocks of 5 sets, or we might, if they have a match, we get them to do 2 evenings of 2 sets. Okay, it's spreading it out that bit more, that we're not constantly loading them and we're not pushing them to their boundaries. Okay, so we can see, some of you might see these, we have them up on Twitter. It's just sample kind of strength circuits we'd have done with put up for people to do. Now Owen put these together, he's done a good job on them, in fairness. So again, we have 6 exercises, 5 exercises in this one. Okay, so we're focusing on the 5 exercises and we're doing 4 rounds. So when we say 4 rounds, we have 4 sets. Okay, so you have your body weight squat, 15 push up, T-plane. So again, we're working on the same movements, but we're working on strength as well. All right, and we see in day 2 again, you have your lunge, med ball. You're working on some of the similar but slightly changed. I'm not going to go too much into them. It tells you exactly what to do, okay, and how to do them correct. But these are just examples of strength exercises or strength circuits that we would have done for put up on Twitter. Okay, so again, you're trying to keep it simple. It's about getting the confidence in them. So we can add a bit more weight to our later age, but it's about getting them to do these movements from 11 to 14 without the weight. Okay. All right. So order of progression of the exercises. So as a coach, we know how to progress them. We also know, more importantly, we know how to regress them. Okay, so by regressing them, it's making it easier. Okay, so if we have someone at level 2 or at level 3 and they're struggling with an exercise, it's very important that we know how to regress as well as progress. How do we make it easier? But when we are progressing an exercise, so increase the complexity of the exercise. So challenge the functional competency of the player. So a lot of people will think, by progressing exercise, how do we make it harder? Sure, add more weight. It doesn't work like that. By adding more weight, you could be taking away posture. The technique could go straight away. So it is very important that we know how to challenge the competency of the player, the functional competency of their movement. So one of the simplest examples I could use would be the lunge. We'll have people that would lunge all day long in their sleep, eyes closed, while walking forward. Okay, so if you have a 13 to 14-year-old, very confident in the lunge, doing it perfectly, stable when they're landing, stable through the exercise. But how do we make that harder for them before moving on to step 2 or 3? Get them to do it in reverse. Okay, so by getting them to do the backwards lunge, you're using the same muscle group, but it's a different movement. Okay, same exercise, slightly different movement because we're going backwards. But you could see a big change in them, that they'll be very unstable. They don't know what's happening. They're not confident at the movement because they're not used to it. So before we move to 2 or 3, we should know how to progress an exercise by number 1 first. If they get confident in that, then we can increase the volume. So by giving them more sets, more reps. Finally, we then increase the load. Okay, the load should be, for the groups we're working with, increasing load should be the last thing we're looking at. Okay, then stage 4 is in it. That's increased fatigue, but that's by fatiguing other muscles to make sure we're working on one muscle group. Okay, so 1, 2, and 3 are the ones we should be looking at. But before we go to step, we should be able to complete number 1 before we look at anything else. So again, it's by making them, challenging them. The same with the lunge. If you get them to lunge and you have your wobble cushion or an unstable surface where they're lunging on, again, that's making the movement more complex. That we are challenging in their function, movement, the confidence, because they're on an unstable surface. The leg is going to be that much wobblier. The muscles have to work that small bit harder. Okay, so before we move on, because I think we're okay for time, does anyone have any questions on that part before we move on? If you want to put up your hand, and then Tommy will call out your name, or press the hand mark on the bar. If not, we can move on and we'll wait till the end.
Just Ger put in there, Kieran, important to note some players can't squat or lunge due to tight hips and ankle impingement. Coaches need to identify this.
Yeah, and it is. So as I said, everyone's going to be different. You wouldn't be surprised the amount of athletes that have the tight hips, especially GAA footballers, because it's a game where you're moving multi-directional very quickly. Okay, so as we said about getting them mobile, getting them flexible from that age group of 11 to 14, that's where we bring in the flexibility, and that's where the GAA 15 has all the mobility, flexibility, activation work that will help with that. But we also said when we get to 15, the age of 15, when we start adding external load, that we keep that mobility and we keep that flexibility. And especially when they're going through growth spurts, the muscle length will be changing. So it is important that we keep the length and we keep the suppleness and the flexibility in the muscles. So that's why recovery is important after trainings. We're not going to delve much into recovery today, a small bit, because that's a total different topic altogether. But flexibility we get from the young age, but we want to maintain it throughout. So it is very important for them to be flexible. And especially when we start adding external loading, you're putting more pressure on the muscles. So they're going to be tighter.
And then just Alan has a counterweight movement jump. What is it? Question mark.
Okay, so I'll go back up to it here. Counterweight movement jump. Okay, so with this, you're adding in a bit more to the power side of it. So you have strength and power. All right, so power is your acceleration. So everyone's power is going to be different. Someone might be stronger. So someone's strength could be better than one player, but the second player could be more powerful. Okay, so they work more differently. Nowadays, it's all about power. So by doing the counter movement jump, we're getting them used to the landing as well. So GAA, we have to jump for the ball, we have to land, but we need to be able to land correctly. So if you can see there on the counter movement jump, the second picture in, or the picture in the middle, that is called your power stance. Okay, so we should be able to go down into our power stance, jump up and land in our power stance, ready to go. That our muscle are taking the absorption. So remember we were on about the force absorption. Okay, so that when we land, our muscles are strong enough to be able to absorb the force to take it away from our joints. Okay, so the counter movement jump will prepare them for that by also introducing them to power.
Perfect.
Okay.
One more question there.
Yeah.
Would yoga be a benefit for this age group?
Not necessarily, because generally they would be very flexible as it is. Okay, because a lot of them wouldn't probably have done much of resistance training. Generally, it would get them, the way we're doing the resistance training or the mobility with them now is to get them moving correctly. Yoga can work, but the older you get, the better yoga does benefit for you. But it won't do any harm to them. It will help them with flexibility, all right, and it will keep them flexible, and it is no harm for them. But you'll get as much benefit at that age for doing a stretching session than a yoga session.
Perfect.
Okay. So we're going on to our conditioning training. So this is the part everybody loves. That's usually Tommy at the front there of all the runs. Anyways, I'd be usually near the back. It's the one part I don't like, but it has to be done. I don't think many people like it. So the outcomes from this, the physical demands of Gaelic football. What are we training for? Okay. Conditional interval methods. Okay, so the different interval methods we can use to help us benefit as GAA players. Okay, on the pitch as a team, but also when we're training now on our own. As times are hard, we don't know what way it is. We have to be able to try and kind of recreate a match type team so that when we come back to the pitch, we're ready to go, and planning and programming. Okay, so we're on the last few bits here now. So Gaelic football can be described as an invasion field sport which requires players to perform repeated, unpredictable bouts of high-intensity exercise interspersed with light to moderate activity in response to the patterning of play. Okay, so the one things we want to take out of this is the unpredictable bouts of high intensity. Unfortunately, with GAA, we need to train both energy systems, or aerobic and anaerobic. So aerobic is more for long base stuff. Your anaerobic is for your high intensity bouts. Okay, so we have low moderate activity to high intensity bouts of GAA, so we have to try and train both. So few conditioning strategies we can look at. Okay, if we were pitching, everything was back to the way it was, we're up training away on the pitch. One of the best ways to get this in is your small-sided games. Okay, at that age, we want to push small-sided games as much as we can. You look at, I think it was up at the Crow Park, at the conferences up there, they had a guy from the Belgium soccer over, youth soccer, the whole way up, and he was saying that they don't play 11-a-side at all. It's all 3-a-side, 4-a-side, small-sided games. As well as working on their fitness, you're working on their skills. You're also working on their decision-making, okay? And especially decision-making under fatigue. Okay, then we have interval training, endurance training, and we have mixed approach. So interval training is what we're going to look at. Endurance training can tie in on that depending on the length of the interval. And then you have a mixed approach, which brings in a lot.
You're just breaking up. Sorry.
Okay.
You're breaking up
yeah.
a bit. Maybe if you turn off your microphone and turn it back on, it might help.
How is that there?
A little bit better, yeah.
Okay, 1 second now. So with that, endurance training and interval, depending on the length of the interval, can make a huge difference.
You're completely gone there now, Kieran.
Yeah. And Darren will take over 1 second now.
Good Wi-Fi out in Maryland.
It's not the best.
Do you want me to share my screen there, Kieran? Do you? Get it ready.
Yeah, if you just want to take over for a sec, Darren, if you want to talk about the small-sided games, and I'll just get this up and going again.
Yeah, just 1 second there. Is that coming up there now?
Yeah, it's up there now, yeah.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, sorry there, guys. Yeah, look, small-sided games. I suppose when we do go back at some stage, and we don't know how kind of our time frame will be going into playing games and what it may be. So we're saying best case scenario, as Kieran alluded to there, is that it does work on fitness, and there's a slide to kind of talk about, the frequency of it and how long do we do things for. So like it just means that if kids are playing small-sided games, you're able to kind of look at their fitness levels. They're getting loads of touches of the ball, and that's what we want, is they'll be hungry for the ball. So we don't need to kind of worry about a huge amount of running with them. And I suppose like if you're mixing it up with, you know, like kind of, we won't have a huge amount of time, as I said, like, you know, you have the interval training with that, and the kind of your endurance training, and then you have a mixed approach. So you would, like, for me, when they do go back, you know, it is all about kind of getting on the ball and not worrying too much about endurance and doing laps of the fields, you know, because, you know, Mickey Whelan, for those who know him, you know, he would be involved with Dublin, and he would have been responsible for the Go games and small-sided kind of games and getting loads of touches. And research of recently as well is that it's come out, like, you know, that's what chaps want, you know, of all ages. I know they might be tough at the time when you're doing them, like as teenagers or into adults, you know, kind of 3-on-3s and 4-on-4s, but, you know, you're working the right areas that need to be worked on. So it is important that, you know, that's when we do get back out into the fields, that we do plan our sessions, that it isn't just, sure, we'll throw out a few cones, sure, they haven't been running in ages, and then they're sure, look, we'll do 500s or hundreds and stuff like that. So it has to be planned out, and it has to be a mixture of sporadically kind of small-sided games. You might do a little bit of recovery with the ball, different things like that. So it is important that when we do get out into the field, if we get out into the fields, that, you know, that is well planned out. Is Kieran still gone there? Sorry, I'll just get this up here. Sorry, guys. There we are. Is that coming up there now? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what we're looking at here is long intervals. So just getting a little bit more kind of sciencey on it is how long. So for long intervals, you're looking at 1 minute to 4 minutes. All right. The intensity is anywhere between 80 to 110% of a mass kind of run. So when is this done? It's done in off season and early pre-season. So obviously we're off season now at the moment, and kind of could be hopefully coming into early pre-season. So you're looking at the active long intervals, and then the PLI, which is the passive long intervals. So if you could take a look at the table there, which is the passive long intervals. So you've got an intensive kind of work rate there that you're working for like 120 seconds, and then you've got, you know, 240 seconds rest, and the intensity levels is 100 to 110, and you can see the sets and the reps there. So it's just important that, like, you know, you can see, because a normal and a 180 to 180, so it's a 1-to-1 kind of rest ratio there, and then extensive, then it's 60 seconds, 30 seconds, so it's 90 to 100%. So this is giving you an idea, like, you know, so of when kind of young fellas you're planning your training session, especially now, like if they are doing stuff, is that it's structured, you know, that they understand what they might have to do. I suppose, like, there's some of us that are doing some stuff at the out there because of the current climate, is that it's the times and the recovery that is important, because if they're getting the recovery, they're getting quality then in the work that they're actually doing. And as you can see there, is that it's early pre-season or off-season work, so you're kind of getting the building up the, I suppose, the cardio, the foundations for the harder work then to come then as well. Has anyone got any questions on that? Like, it's pretty straightforward in what we're kind of saying there. So I can't see my chat box. If there's any questions on this one here, just put your hand up, and Tommy will just pose them then as well at the same time. Yeah, I'll go
just back in there.
You'll go back in, yeah. Sorry, I was just on this. You can see that there. I'll keep sharing my screen there, yeah. So I was just saying there that yeah, work away.
So we can see there the long intervals, all right? So with that, long interval is the way Darren will probably go through it, but I'm just going to fly through it. How do we describe a long interval? So it's 1 to 4 minutes long. Okay, so when we're here, it's working at MAS, okay, but intensity should be in around the 80%. Okay, we wouldn't be able to go for 100% up to 4 minutes. When should we apply this in our long intervals? So off season or early pre-season. So we're getting that aerobic in, or kind of our long endurance in at that. All right. So by doing that, we also have our active and our passive. Okay, active is active recovery. So by doing active recovery, we're either walking or jogging during our rest, or our passive is we're just standing at the corner. So you have your 3 different types. So remember earlier on we talked about the ratios of 1:1. Okay, so 1:1 will give you the 180 seconds there you see in the middle. If you're working for 180 seconds, our rest is 180 seconds. Okay, so that's a ratio of 1:1. Again, we can see the one over that, your intensive work, your rest is 120 or you're working 120 seconds and your rest is 240. So that's a rest or work to rest ratio of 1:2. So we'll see later down the line exactly kind of in more detail of when we come to short intervals, how important your work to rest ratio is. Okay, so if you want to go on to the next slide there, Dan. So way to work short intervals or work to ratio is very important. So what describes a short or how long is a short interval? It's 0 to 60 seconds. Okay, so by doing 0 to 60 seconds, you're working a lot harder. You can see your intensity there is 100 to 130 MAS. So we want to be working around 100% for that, whatever you're working at. So 15, let it be 30 seconds. When do we introduce this? Okay, or when should we be doing this? So coming towards the end of your preseason or the start of your in-season. Okay, it's no harm to do bouts of this throughout the whole in-season just to keep things on their toes, but it's very important how much we do. Again, we have our active or passive recovery. So active again is we're either jogging in between or walking in between or rest, and passive is we're just waiting at the corner. So you can see down here, we have our intensive, normal, and extensive. So if we're working for 15 seconds and we have 30 seconds rest, again, you can see that's a work to rest ratio of 1:2. But you can also see that the intensity is a lot higher. Okay, so a lot of people think it with a shorter rest. Again, if you're working for 15 seconds and a ratio of 1:1, 15 seconds rest, the intensity is going to be slightly lower. And that's because with the ratio of 1:2, with the 30 seconds rest, the athlete is able to work a lot harder in between. Okay, so we're able to work a lot harder for the 15 seconds if he's getting that slightly more rest. So it's not always giving them the shorter break is going to be tougher. Sometimes they will benefit out of getting slightly longer rest so that they're working harder for the 15 seconds. They might be able to work hard for the normal session for the first 2 or 3 15 seconds. But if you go into your 4th rep or your 5th rep, 6th rep, the intensity is going to gradually drop. But if we can do it for 4 to 8 minutes at 15 seconds, you'll see the intensity will maintain up high. So it's always important to kind of think about what you're looking for. If you're looking for them to work really intense for 4 minutes, giving them that bit more of a break will keep the intensity higher. Okay. Does anyone have any questions on that before we move on to the next bit? No, is there anything coming up there, Tommy?
Nothing at the minute. We'll just give another 20 seconds just in case.
So I hope you can all just see the difference. If we can take 2 things out of the 2 different ones is the length of time. So your long intervals are 1 to 4 minutes and your short intervals are 0 to 60 seconds. Okay, so it's very important that we know the difference. Okay.
Can you hear us there, Kieran? Can you?
Just one lad gone in there.
Yeah.
Sorry, Darren. Yeah. So this is this running or games or both? So the intervals.
Yeah, I was just about to say. Yeah, no.
So this can be your running intervals, but it also can be game. It is both. Okay, so if you have a long interval from 1 to 4 minutes, you're getting a lot more endurance in. You're still working on the endurance side of it. Okay, and it's the same with the running. If you're keeping it short, you're going to keep it a lot more intense. You're going to be working on your anaerobic side of it. So you can use it as running blocks, but you can also use it for games as well. It's the length of time we need to, the length of time we need to know the difference for, and what energy systems we're working on. So your long intervals is for your aerobic, so that's your long distance or your more endurance side of it, and your short intervals are for your anaerobic, which are for your kind of for your short bursts. So repeatedly getting out in front of your defender, repeatedly getting out in front of your defender, getting out in front of the attacker.
That's all, Carol.
Yeah. So if we go on to the next slide. Okay, so we're going to be working on our speed. Okay, so speed is very important, obviously, for a GAA player. Speed is the main difference that is the main probably attribute that is the difference between being a top athlete and being an athlete around the middle age. Okay, because the top athletes will always be working at a high speed. Okay, so in terms of speed, it's broken down into 3 different groups. You have your agility, which is moving directions quickly, change your direction at top speed, and max speed. Okay, so we need to be able to train these all. So when we're working on speed, we shouldn't be working on game-based stuff. When we're looking at the fitness side of it, we can introduce that through game-based as well. Okay, so if you go on to the next slide there, Darren. So when we're training speed, we're training 2 components. We have acceleration and max velocity. So it's very important we train the both. So if we're training acceleration, the distance we work at is from 0 to 30 meters. Okay, it will take a person, an athlete, at least up to 30 meters to hit top speed. You'd be surprised. I say in a match, some person might hit top speed once, maybe twice during a game. Okay, but it's very important that we do train that so that when they do reach it, that they're able to maintain it. Okay, so by working acceleration, we're working at 100% max effort, and our distance is 0 to 30 meters. If we then go over to the max velocity side, we can see our intensity is still 100% max effort, but we're working up to 60 meters plus. Okay, once we pass 60 meters at max velocity, it's about maintaining it after that. But it's very important we can see here, if we are training speed by doing sprints, the rest is very important. So we can see here, the rest for every 10 meters we train. When we're looking at speed, we have to have 45 to 60 seconds of rest. Okay, so if you're looking at, we're doing the max velocity, we're going up to 60 meters. So 60 by 60, we have to have nearly 6 minutes rest in between. Otherwise, you won't reach max velocity. Okay, so it is very important that if we are doing a speed session, it will take time, because if we don't reach max velocity in training, we're not going to reach it in a match. And if we do reach it in a match, there is a good chance where an injury can happen. So if we can take 1 or 2 things out of this, that speed is broken down into 2 parts. You have acceleration and max velocity. So max velocity is your top speed, but most importantly, when we are training these, the rest time. So you're looking at 45 seconds to 60 seconds for every 10 meters. We question in there?
Yeah, sorry. Can you explain the start 2 points and rolling?
Okay, so the start 2 points with that is the 2 points, keeping the head down. Okay, I didn't want to go into too much of this because this is more into the mechanics side of it. So your 2 points is the head down and you're driving, okay, for your acceleration part. But more the max velocity side, it's trying to maintain the posture, maintain the mainly is your posture and more your technique. It's kind of your rolling technique. We can go into the mechanics of it, but we could be here for forever. But it's just your 2 main points is with acceleration is keeping the head down and driving forward. But when we get to max velocity, we're more upright. Our posture is upright. It's called, you just keep rolling out. You're rolling your legs forward, that you're maintaining the same. Okay, the problem is with max velocity, a lot of the time when people are pushing themselves, the kind of your posture and technique goes out the window. So we have to try and focus on that when we are getting max velocity. Is there any other questions?
Is rest after each rep or each set?
After each rep. That's very important, okay? That we're getting 45 to 60 seconds per 10 meters after each rep. And again, if you are working on acceleration, you'll get away with the 45 seconds, okay? It depends at all what how they're feeling. Because if you're working on speed, you don't want them fatigue. But if we're working on max velocity, it's very important that if you just say we have the 60 meters by 60 seconds, that's your 6 minutes rest. If they don't get the 6 minutes rest, they're not going to reach max velocity again. You need the adequate rest to keep hitting max velocity.
So we just have a follow-on question from that one, Kieran, yeah, you might not get that in a match. Should you not look at quicker recovery?
So if you're not, the reason why we're not getting it in matches is because we're not training for it. Okay. So the only way you'll reach max velocity is that you train for it. But if we don't train for it and we do reach it in a match once or twice, maybe 3 times, there is more of a chance that you will get injured because your body isn't used to it.
Okay, and then Ger just asked
for injury prevention, so we have to train the body for that.
Okay, is rest active or passive?
It is. You can either have both, but when we say passive or when we say active, you'll be looking at walking. You're not going to be jogging, okay? And you can bring in different things in between, like you can have a small hand drill or hand passing drill of them left and right hand standing 2 yards apart. They're not moving, kicking left and right foot. You don't have to have them just standing there for 6 minutes. It's about being able to train, being able to bring this in, having them kicking left and right foot to each other 2 or 3 yards apart, that they're on the spot. They're hardly moving, but they're still doing something. Okay? That you can either have both, but you don't want them standing there for 5 to 6 minutes doing nothing. So we can have them doing other stuff while they're having their rest.
Another follow-on question again. How often do you train per week for speed? And is it still done at the start of the season?
With the speed, you'll be looking more in towards during the season. Okay? Because you're doing a lot more endurance stuff earlier on, your pre-season or coming into games, you'll be working on speed throughout the whole season. You wouldn't probably be doing a session every week with it.
Sorry, session. Not season.
Pardon?
That was meant to be session, not season.
Oh, season, yeah.
Okay,
so you wouldn't be doing, like, you'd be bringing in probably a small bit of speed towards the end of a session or during the session. You could bring it in once or twice a week, but again, you wouldn't be doing high volumes of it. So you can see there, your acceleration or max volume, you'd be only doing 4 reps, 1 to 2 sets. So you'd only be doing probably 8 at the most. Okay, you don't even have to do that. Again, you have to be able to know when to not to do it, when to cut back, that you're not constantly doing your max effort. Because if you're doing a lot of max effort, the reason you're doing max effort is to get max effort out of them, to get max velocity. The more you do, the less they're going to reach the max velocity. So it's about keeping it short and sharp, doing 5 or 6 of them up to 8 at the end of a session into the middle of a session, and probably once a week, if even. Once every 2 weeks. It's just to get them used to the max velocity. You're not so. Any other questions?
Seems to be it for now.
Guys, we're nearly there, so there's only a couple more slides. So if anyone needs to log off, that's fine. But as I said, this will be recorded, so there's only a couple of more slides then. So if you just want to bear with us, we'll be finished soon enough. Thanks.
Okay, yeah. If you want to move on there, Darren.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, so we won't go too much into details with these. These are just some of the sprints we would be looking at. Okay, again with this is working on your max effort, again with a small bit of acceleration in it. The likes of this session here, there's very little in the main part of it, but you will be looking at probably up to the guts of an hour. Okay, but you're working at different distances. You wouldn't be hitting max velocity at for 100 meters every time. So that's why you bring the distances down. Okay, if you want to move on to the next one. These are examples we had up on Twitter. We had some of them up on Twitter. We had just created some of these. So this is more your long interval one. So again, the work rest ratio is 1:1. So you have 4 times 500 meters. So if we take those 2.5 minutes to run 500 meters, you have 2.5 minutes rest. Again, once you know the distances, or once you know the times for long interval and short interval, you can vary them to what you want. Okay, you don't have to be taking out a book, or this team is doing that, this team is doing that. If you know the times and when to do them, it becomes a lot easier that you're able to do them yourself with the team. The next one. And then this is your Tabata run. So with Tabata running, it's more kind of game based. So we can't go through kind of your it's more game specific, so that you're not just going running the world looking at time. So with this, you have 2 cones 20 minutes apart, and you're doing a shuttle sprint for 20 seconds on and 20 seconds off. So this is more game realistic, because in the game you have bouts of 20-30 seconds where you're working hard. So with this, you're working hard for 20 seconds and then you're resting for 20 seconds for 5 reps, and you have 2 minutes in between each rep. So we will be sending, I seen that coming up there. We'll make these available to download. We'll be putting these in the pack as well. So what we want to just to give you examples of different drills and different running blocks, or you can use these in games. So again, because we do this, it won't, these are more game based, that you're working kind of 20 seconds on, 20 seconds off. If you want to go on to the next one there, Darren. And I think, so we have 2 slides left. So every training session we do, no matter if it's skills based, running, condition games, strength, we need to follow the FIT principle. Okay, and this ensures that the players are going to get better and perform to get the benefits from the training session. So the frequency is the F. So how often, how many times per week? The intensity, how hard. T, the time, how long and how much they're doing, and then the type, what are the types of training. So if we know someone has if there is a match, if they have a match coming up 2 or 3 days down the line, obviously we'll have to have an intense session to make sure that they're going in at a high pace into the game, that they're not going in sluggish. But if we are having intense, we also have to look at time. We'll have to cut the time back of that session to make sure that they're not tired then for the next game. So each one of these will have an effect on the type of training session you want to do. So it is very important, no matter what training session you are, you follow this FIT principle, because I guarantee it will help the athletes more, especially with the overtraining. So the last slide we have is got to do with overtraining. So if you want to go on to it there. Okay, so this is the overtraining syndrome. So this is how it happens. So by not following the FIT principle, this can have an effect. This can have an effect on the athlete. So we can see on the left there, there's an arrow pointing up. So this is the player's capacity or well-being, or else we can also put performance there. And then down the x-axis is the time. So when we train, we have a baseline. So after a training session, you'll see there the load is coming up. The load is coming up. And the baseline drops. So we need the adequate time and recovery to get up back over our baseline for our training session adaptations adaptations to have an effect on us. So the line we want to follow is the blue line up. So if we don't follow this, if we don't have the adequate recovery, which we probably will have a session on that because recovery is important for players, they will stay under the baseline. They'll come to the next training session. They're not fully recovered. We'll have a load again. We're going even further down the scale. And you could have 3 or 4 good weeks of training and you're wondering what's going on here. The performance isn't better. We're overtraining them. Okay, so we need to give them the adequate recovery time so that the adaptations can come to effect to the athlete. And then when they come back to the next session, they're at that higher baseline. So then they come down and they get better and better every week. So overtraining can affect. So excessive loading can have a huge effect. So that's why we need to follow the FIT principle. We also need to know when to cut back. Okay, we can always push and push and push, but sometimes it can benefit the players to cut back and giving them that bit of rest. We can go into huge detail with that, but it's just to give you an insight how important recovery is. So I think we'll leave it at that. Again, we have questions at the end. The last slide was any questions, but we're gone 15 minutes over time, nearly 20 minutes. So sorry for the internet connection breakup earlier on, but luckily it came back really quick. Again, if you have questions, you see my email there. We won't go through it at the moment, but you can always email me anytime. Or if 3 or 4 of you want to go into a group and come in and go through any section in more detail. Again, we couldn't go into a huge amount of detail for the amount of time. If we wanted to do the resistance training workshop, I think it's over 3 weekends. So it is very important that we do give you an insight, and there is little bits. If you can take 2 or 3 things out this evening, I'm delighted. But I just hope you found it very informational, and I hope you always get in touch.
Yeah, guys. Look, thanks very much for tuning in there. I know we just ran over a little bit there. Look, as we said, this recording will be going up, and we will be sending you a pack there with some of this information. But with all of the information that we've discussed, and the PowerPoint will go up then. So the key thing is like the frequency, intensity, and time there, and the times. Like when you get the chaps back out onto the training fields, you know, use this as a little bit of a gauge for planning your skills, your drill sessions with the guys. I just want to thank Kieran and Owen for putting in a huge amount of work into this, and Tommy there this evening. Like that, look, we do hope that next year when when things are a little bit more smoother, that we'd have more bodies on the ground from AIT with interns, and we'd be able to roll out more of these initiatives, like getting out and actually doing the GA15 warm up in your clubs, or doing clusters of clubs together and going through some of these principles that are there. But look, I suppose it's exposing the kids, and it's the quality over quantity. It would be one thing that I'd say, and probably Kieran would echo that, is, you know, whatever we do with the guys, I suppose first and foremost, you know, whether they're 10 years of age or 35 years of age, is that they want to have fun. You know, make them coming back down to your club. And for you as coaches, you are the ones that got the time, you know, here this evening, and you're the one that's going to get this information. So you are the ones armed with this information. So it's for you to go now to your clubs and impart the knowledge and the information that you do have. Like that, as Kieran said, look, if there's a few years that want to kind of jump on again sometime again, you know, and we're more than approachable, so we can do kind of little questions and answers, or go through things a little bit more specific. I just want to also thank, I know, see kind of Ken McNevin and Jaren for, you know, a couple of our development squad coaches there that logged in tonight as well. So look, you know, it's very much appreciated for you giving your time, because look, that we want to keep the standards high, you know, within our clubs, because if the club players are getting exposed to all of this at a very young age, it makes our job at development squad in Westmeath a lot easier. So look, as I said, thanks again for tuning in, and I hope everyone stays safe and have a good weekend, because we're promised the good weather. Get out and enjoy it while you can, instead of being stuck at a computer. Thanks, everyone, and we'll be talking to you again soon. All right, bye-bye.
See you. Thanks.